Okay, coming at you today with another solo sode, and I wanted to talk about females in male dominated industries or just feminine energy in a very masculine dominated industry. And so, if you don't know my story, I spent almost 9 years in the luxury auto retail world. I was one of two females on a 8-person management team. And out of the entire sales department, there was typically about 14 of us. And again, only two women. And so if you're familiar with the auto world, it's a rough and tough industry. It's known for chewing people up and spitting them out. And I had a really unique career because when I started in auto, I had no previous experience. And I started in the luxury sector, which is pretty rare. People kind of usually move up into a store like that later on in their career. And I started and ended my career in one place, which is also very uncommon for the auto world. So I had a pretty unorthodox auto industry experience. And I started in sales and then climbed my way into a management position in the finance department. And I would say, all in all, I had a really successful career. Like, while that industry can be tough and really pushes you to your limits, my experience was really great. I worked with a lot of great people. I worked with a phenomenal product, and I learned so many great skills. But it is interesting being a female navigating those spaces because I'll be honest, for the first probably 6 to 7 years of my career, I was heavily in my masculine energy. Okay. Now, of course, let's talk about the fact that every single human being has feminine and masculine energy within them. That's what creates balance within us. But we tend to lean into one more innately. And innately, I am a feminine being. And that's where I would say my um, true flow comes from. But in that world, I was heavily in my masculine and I became really unbalanced. Okay. And so naturally, when you're in a sales role or just business altogether, there is more of a masculine energy. Masculine is based on doing and going out and the material world and making things happen and hunting. Like, that's very much masculine, where feminine energy is very receptive and magnetic and flow and intuitive and emotional. Again, masculine energy is very logical and rational. And so, in my experience of business, you do have to lean into your masculine a little bit more. Okay. But looking back on it, I am actually really shocked at how much I fell down the rabbit hole. Like, I became one of the boys, okay? And I would talk like them. I would, make the same type of jokes. I would cuss. I was brash. I was tough. I was a bitch. Like, and I say that with love and compassion to myself, but like, I didn't put up with no bullshit in that space. And that, I guess, got me a lot of respect in some ways, but it also threw me out of balance. And not just in the business world, I was out of balance in all areas of my life. Like, I often say when I was dating during that time, that not even just with the men I was dating, the men I was working with too, but I used to say, I'm like, I'm constantly in a dick swinging contest and I feel like I'm winning most of them. And that is not a good thing as a woman who is attracted to men. Like, I'm a woman who's always wanted a strong male to lead me in a relationship, and I grew up with strong men. But when I was so out of balance, I didn't even recognize it in the moment. It took one of my girlfriends to really pinpoint it for me. But B, it's like, I was repelling the masculine energy I wanted in my life because I was holding so much of it. So, like, there wasn't even really space for a strong male leader to come into my life from a personal standpoint, because I was consuming all that space on my own. But, it's, again, really, it was for me anyways, really easy to adapt to that heavily masculine energy because at that time my career was my end all be all. It was my claim to fame. It was my way of proving that I was worthy, which obviously I undid all of that after the fact, and what the detrimental effects of that belief system was. But it was my claim to fame. And so as I spent more time in that space and I got more success, I almost doubled down on the fact that I needed to be in this masculine energy to be successful, you know? And then after, 5 years of running that ship really hard and seeing that I could essentially keep up with the boys, because I was earning my keep, to say the least. I was becoming a very valuable part of that team. You know, again, I was keeping up with that male energy. At the same time, I was also running myself into the ground. And of course, if you guys have ever heard me talk about burnout, burnout is not because we have too much stuff on our plate. Burnout comes from the fact that we're misaligned within. And one of the areas I was really misaligned was with my masculine and feminine energy. I was so heavy in my masculine. And again, as I said, all humans have both in us, but we innately lean to one a little bit more. And so a man can still be, even if he innately is more in his masculine and that's where he finds his power, he can still be out of balance by having very little feminine energy in his life, as far as within him, having a hard time connecting to his emotions and his intuition, which are extremely important in being an effective leader. But as a woman, having too much masculine energy, I was way out of whack, okay? Because I was already not in my innate power space. And not only was I not in it, it was consuming me. So a major part of my burnout just came from that misalignment of just being so heavy in my masculine, and it was draining me and draining me. And it actually wasn't until I talked to one of my girlfriends who's quite intuitive, and she had actually done an Akashic Records reading for me, which I read them as well. And she talked about this imbalance within me and the fact that, like, at that time where I was really struggling with it or really seeing the effects of it was, again, my dating life. And she's like, you're holding so much masculine space. There's no room for any more masculine energy to even come into your life. And she's like, you're really going to have to start learning how to balance this. And so for me, what I started to do, and this might sound silly, was when I was at work, I had my masculine hat on. When I left work, I took it off. And I literally, for the first, I'm sure, few months, I literally did that action, like taking off my masculine hat. If you're listening to this, you can't see it, but I'm essentially moving a hat off of my head. Okay. Taking off the masculine hat, and kind of that being a signal of like, okay, I can let my walls down, I can let my guards down, and I can just kind of sit my feminine a little bit more. And that's what I first started with, was just like, when I'm not at home, I'm going to try and rest in my feminine more, and when I'm at work, I'll let the masculine side kind of run free. And it was not an easy adjustment. Like, I would like to say it was as simple as taking off the hat, but it wasn't. Like, I really had to learn to regulate my nervous system so that I felt safe slowing down, being in my own company, um, reconnecting with my intuition on a much deeper level. Because your intuition is just like a muscle. It needs to be worked. We all have it, but the strength and quality of its connection to you really needs to be built up. Okay. So regulating my nervous system, mindfulness practices, meditation, being more connected with my female girlfriends. Like, cause again, I'll be honest, when I was in that peak of my career and I was hustling so hard, I had isolated myself so much from, like I still maintained my relationships because they've always had a strong foundation, but I was isolating myself so much that I wasn't letting any external nurturing of feminine energy really come into my life. And one of those areas was with my mom. My mom she lives 2 hours out of town. She'd be like, can I come see you? Can I, she's so nurturing. Can I come take care of you? My mom to me is the epitome of like the feminine, most loving, nurturing woman ever. And I was so busy and tired, I'd say, no, no, no. But really, I needed that nurturing at that time. But again, masculine tendency to kind of isolate, not process the emotions. And so again, so when I was learning that I needed to create more balance in this area for myself, I would I started with just at home trying to switch into that mode more and just again connect to those things that innately made me more feminine, even just dressing a little bit more feminine at times. I used to wear black a lot and like navy blues, and that's cool, not that we can't wear that as females, but I started to incorporate more color. And these might sound like silly practices, but at the time it was what I could do to just kind of remind me of that side of myself that I had been disconnected from for so long. Okay. But what really started to unlock my feminine again was just realizing, I guess, undoing the part of me that felt like I needed to prove myself in that space still. I was, again, at this point, 6 years into my career. I had created a pretty solid reputation for myself. My value in the company, I thought, was at a really strong point as well, too. And yes, the external provided that validation, but also I just had to trust in myself that I was going to be okay if I kind of just let that constant need to prove and hang with the boys all the time attitude down, let those walls down and just fall back into being Mintu again. And again, I did this with more meditation and connecting to my intuition. And what I realized is when I started to make that shift, so much of my work life changed. I became way nicer, like to the point where it's like my boss at the time came into my office one day and said, Mintu, you are so much better to work with now. Like, and I laughed at it and so did he, but it was the truth. Like, I'm sure even the men that I worked with, while they respected me, they didn't want to come into my office and see a bully. I'm sure naturally, them being men, they probably would have wanted to be received with a little bit more kindness and softness. But I was guns ablazing, like, come on in. What do you want to talk about? Like, I'm on fire, let's go. And so meeting them with this super competitive nature. And I'm sure that even as my coworkers, knowing we're on the same team, they probably would have loved to come into my office and just been like received with some soft energy because again, they're around men all day long too. And that balance would have been nice. And also the other big thing I noticed is that when I stepped into my feminine more, my ability to connect with my clients skyrocketed even more. Now, I believe I always was quite strong in this area as far as being able to connect, but the last few years, it really, really like drastically improved because again, now I was nurturing my clients to a different level. And, they would ask for me for more often. I had clients that me and my other counterpart, the other female Faye, shout out to Mama Faye, love her dearly. She was always very naturally nurturing. Okay. And she's a little bit older than me, but she was always Mama Bear. But we would have clients that would only want to see us. Like they would wait for us. Didn't matter if we weren't in till the next day. If there was guys there that were still really good at their jobs, they would wait for us and they'd be our repeat clients because again, especially in business, and I was working again in luxury sales, so high ticket purchases, that level of client, they said it to me before. I remember the first client I ever had, he said, "Look, I can spend my money wherever I want to." He's like, "Show me why I should spend it with you." And yeah, the product spoke for itself, okay? Like it's the number one luxury auto retailer in the world, okay? The product spoke for itself, the facilities, all of that. But that statement really started to become more true and more of my mantra in the fact that like I could treat these clients with a love and care that they wouldn't get any other place and allow them to trust me in a way where it's like they're not doing business with me, they're just creating a lasting connection and bond, you know? And as I stepped into that more, I do think I naturally had a little bit of that throughout my career, but it really got ramped up near the end. As I leaned into that more, I saw everything around my world start to shift business wise and personally. And honestly, being able to lean into the nurturing side more was my superpower. Like, because no one else, with the exception of Mama Faye, was carrying that energy in that place. And so, not was it only memorable for them to do business with me, it was memorable for them to come back to that store, okay, and do business with us as a whole, because we were nurturing and providing connection and trust with our clients in a way that a lot of other people in that industry weren't, To me, it was always about the relationship with the client, making them feel supported and heard, and knowing that if I did that, they would end up doing business with us and repeat business. Because again, in that sector, it was not typically just like one or two people from the family buying. It was often generations of the family buying from us. And so the other statistic with that too is they talk about is that in when it comes to sales, people typically trust women more. And again, I believe it's because of our innate ability to connect on an emotional level deeper. Let's just be honest, as women, we're more equipped in this space because societally in society, we've been supported to talk about our feelings and emotions. We've been doing it since we were little girls. Men haven't been conditioned with those same things. They've been taught to repress their feelings and hold their feelings in and don't look weak and crying is for girls and all these narratives where, you know, they're not comfortable sharing their emotions. And therefore, if you're not comfortable sharing or regulating your emotions, it's hard for that to be a connection tool for you as a man, right? And so, not that I didn't work with great men who weren't trustworthy and who weren't great men, but that wasn't part of their superpower. That wasn't part of their toolkit the way it was for me. And so, what I would like to say with this is whether you're a male listening to this, if you are a male listening to this, I would encourage you to learn to tap into your feminine a little bit more. And that doesn't mean it's going to take over. It just means that you being able to connect with your emotions and your intuition more is going to add to your ability to be a leader, to execute, to perform at a high level, because it all comes down to human connection and making that connection strong and trustworthy. And as a female, if you are in a male dominated industry and you're trying to figure out what your competitive advantage is, you already got it. It's because you're a woman. Okay. Never let the fact that you are a female be the reason you think you're at a disadvantage. Okay. I worked with majority of men, and the fact that I was a female and different from all of them, that was my superpower. Okay. I didn't realize it at first, but me trying to fit in with them was actually doing myself a disadvantage because I was trying to fit in with the one of 2014, how many ever men were there working at the time. I was trying to fit in with them, where really my superpower was being me, being a woman, and letting that be my competitive advantage. So, all that to say that there's a need for more feminine energy in the business world. And while, yes, we do have to have masculine energy to execute a lot of these things, do not underestimate the power of leaning into those feminine qualities, being able to receive. That means abundance, your intuition, your being able to flow when things shift and change, which we know happens all the time. Your ability to adapt and surrender to that also is an extremely strong attribute as a business person. And again, just making sure that you embrace both sides of you, all sides of you, and allowing your humanity to come through.